What if you woke up and everything was wrong? Not just a bad dream wrong, but fundamentally, terrifyingly off. Your own home feels like a stranger's twisted memory, and you can't remember how you got there, or even who you are anymore. This is the story of a man trapped in a place that looks like his life, but feels like a nightmare. It's a descent into a personal hell, where the walls breathe, the mirrors lie, and the silence is more terrifying than any scream. If you're ready to step into a world where reality is broken and the past refuses to stay buried, stick around, because you're about to hear a story that will make you question everything you think you know about waking up. The air tasted of bone-dry dust, not the clean neglect of time, but something steeped in rot and ancient sorrow. It clung to my tongue, a gritty, metallic flavor like forgotten pennies left too long in the rain. I inhaled, but the air offered no substance, no life, only a strange, still pressure that seemed to push back against my lungs. Gray light, thin and cold, bled through threadbare curtains that hung utterly still, defying any breath of wind. The room was a mockery of familiarity. My bedroom, but seen through fractured glass. The wallpaper, stained like sun-scorched skin, crawled with patterns that writhed at the edge of my vision. Floral designs twisting into silent, gaping mouths before snapping back into innocent spirals when I forced myself to look directly. Every surface felt aged beyond years, brittle and decaying. My body was a stranger, a deep, pervasive ache, settled not in my muscles but in the very bone. A fundamental wrongness, like limbs forced into impossible shapes and held there forever. My fingertips were ice, bloodless and chalky. When I pressed them against my palm, there was no reciprocal warmth, just a chilling, alien touch. My clothes, the familiar brown wool sweater and stiff jeans, felt like ill-fitting shrouds scratching and creaking with a sound that didn't belong to fabric. My watch had stopped at 3:17. The second hand juddered forward a fraction, then snapped back with a frantic insectoid click. It was trapped. Like me. Sitting up was a slow, arduous process. The bed springs screamed beneath me, a sound stretched thin and distorted, as if echoing from a great distance. The house was utterly silent, not the quiet of emptiness, but the crushing weight of an absence of sound. No bird song, no distant traffic, no wind whistling through the eaves. Even the old house's familiar groans were gone. It was a void that pressed against my eardrums, a listening silence that felt like a physical presence. This was my bedroom, or it had been. The angles were all wrong. Corners meeting at impossible acute angles that made my vision swim, made my stomach clench. The ceiling seemed to loom overhead and press down simultaneously. My dresser was alien, taller, darker wood, the brass handles gleaming with an oily, unnatural sheen. The mirror, a hairline crack split the glass down the center, bisecting my reflection. In it, my face was pale, stretched tight over bone, veins like spidery blue ink beneath skin as thin as tissue paper. My eyes were bloodshot webs, and around my neck, just above the collarbone, bruises bloomed like a dark garland, perfect, smudged prints of fingers too large, too thick to be human. I didn't remember how I got home, or anything after. Was it the train? The car? My mind shied away from the memory. A frightened animal bolting into the shadows. The bedroom door creaked open with a sound that felt torn from dry wood. The hallway beyond was a corridor of shifting shadows and dust motes that danced like ash, momentarily coalescing into shapes, faces, symbols, before dissolving. A bare bulb flickered at the far end, but its light was cold, granting no comfort, only intensifying the sense of wrongness. With each stuttering flash, the hallway seemed to elongate, contract, then stretch into impossible distance. I moved slowly, carefully, each step on the carpeted floor seeming to violate the heavy hush that blanketed the house. The wallpaper here was a waking nightmare. The floral pattern did more than shift. It moved, tendrils twisting, petals unfurling into screaming, contorted visages that seemed to track me as I passed. I blinked hard, and they would subside, but the memory of their silent cries lingered. The floorboards beneath the worn carpet felt uneven, like something vast and slow pulsed just beneath the surface. Stepping on a particular spot produced a low, resonating groan that wasn't settling wood, but something wounded, something in pain, deep within the house's foundations. The kitchen door resisted, a heavy, dead weight as if something was leaning against it from the other side. I put my shoulder to it, pushing harder than necessary. It gave way with a tearing groan that sounded sickeningly like tearing flesh. The hinges wept rust, thick and dark as dried blood. Plates were still on the table, food fossilized into gray, crusted shapes, mold blooming in perfect, unnatural concentric circles. The coffee in a mug had dried into a black ring, staring upward like a vacant eye. The calendar on the wall read August. Was that right? The days were scored through with jagged red marks, violently slashed, save for the 17th, circled again and again with frantic, tearing pressure that had gouged the wall beneath. What was special about the 17th? I couldn't grasp it. Hello? My voice died in the airless space, a flat, dull sound instantly absorbed, swallowed by the walls. I called again, louder, desperation creeping into the sound. Nothing. No answering voice. No footsteps upstairs. No creak of the old house settling. Only the terrible listening stillness that pressed in, waiting. On the counter, a knife lay gleaming, unnervingly clean amongst the battlefield of dirty dishes. I picked it up. The blade was arctic cold, leaching the last semblance of warmth from my fingertips. When I set it down, it made no sound, no click or clatter, as if it had landed on something soft, absorbent. I tried my phone, did, a single press of the power button, and the screen flickered. Not my lock screen, but a blurred face, mouth stretched wide in a soundless scream. It was a gut punch, sickening and wrong. A choked gasp, halfway between a cry and a scream, tore from my chest, and the phone fell from my trembling hand, hitting the counter with a sharp, startling sound that ripped through the oppressive silence. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, desperate drumbeat in the void. I needed light, normalcy. I fumbled for the switch. Up, down, up again. In the flicker between movements, a flash of light illuminated the room, just for an instant, revealing dark, creeping stains on the walls I hadn't noticed. Patterns blooming like rot, stretching down from the ceiling like grasping fingers. Then darkness returned. Moving blind in the oppressive dark, I found the front door. I fumbled with the lock, my fingers clumsy and numb. I pulled. It didn't move. I pulled harder, the wood groaning, splintering under my grip, but the door remained inert. It wasn't stuck. It simply didn't function as a door. It was part of the wall, a suggestion of an exit rather than an actual one. Panic clawed at my throat, thick and metallic. I forced it down, forced myself to breathe. The air tasted of decay and something else, iron like blood. I moved through the house, room by room. The layout was familiar, a ghost of my home, but the details were wrong, fundamentally warped. It was a house rebuilt from shattered memory, held together by malice. Photographs on the mantel showed faces turned away or blurred into smears, as if something had licked them clean of identity. One frame held a wedding photo, two figures, their heads replaced by pulsing, black smudges. I touched it. My finger came away wet. Drawers were filled not with clothes or papers, but with empty sheets, yellowed and brittle, centers bleached white as bone. Some bore faint indentations, urgent messages pressed into the page, but the ink had vanished, or perhaps the words had never truly existed. Books on shelves were printed in gibberish, letters coiling and squirming under my gaze. Some pages were blank, others pulsed beneath my fingertips, unnervingly warm and moist like raw flesh. In the living room, the television flickered to life unbidden. Static hissed, coalescing into shapes that almost resembled people. Voices emerged from the white noise, distant, distorted, ragged. "Arthur, why did you? Should have been more careful. Your fault, trapped here with us now." I smashed my fist against the screen. It didn't break, but pain lanced up my arm. My knuckles split, skin tearing. No blood flowed, only a dark fluid that smelled of damp earth. The windows showed a garden, trees twisted at impossible angles, branches like arthritic fingers scraping against the glass. Beyond the fence, the woods leaned inward, a conspiracy of wood and leaf. Silent, watching. Nothing moved. Not a single leaf stirred. The sky above hung too low, a flat, suffocating gray, pressing down like a coffin lid. And among the trees, shapes almost human. Almost. They stood motionless, observing the house. Observing me. I blinked, and they were closer. I snatched the curtains closed, my heart a frantic bird against my ribs. Time here was a broken thing. Minutes bled into hours, hours into days, or perhaps there was no passage at all. The light never changed. The air remained stale. My watch was a frozen relic at 3:17. The second hand a perpetually twitching, futile mechanism. I beat against the walls, I shouted until my throat was raw. I tried to break the windows. Nothing left a mark. My efforts were ghostly, leaving no impression on this solid nail of a reality. Then I found the basement stairs. I was certain they hadn't been there before. Had I simply missed them? But now the door hung open, a maw of absolute darkness swallowing the weak hallway light. The air rising from below carried the scent of wet earth and something sickeningly sweet, like meat left too long in the heat. Every instinct screamed at me not to descend. Every fiber of my being recoiled, but there was nowhere else left to search. I had to know. Each step down felt impossibly long, the descent stretching into a spiraling abyss. The staircase wound down, deeper than the house's foundation could allow, the darkness clinging, thick and suffocating. My footfalls made no sound. The air grew heavy, humid, clinging to my skin like wet silk. My breath rasped in my throat. Something skittered in the dark below, a rush of tiny claws on stone, too many legs moving too fast. I reached the bottom, my fingers trailing along a cold, rough stone wall, and found a light switch. It was wet to the touch. A bulb hissed overhead, then flared to life, casting a sickly yellow glow over a space that defied reality. The basement stretched farther than the house above, a huge, dripping cavern of rough-hewn stone. The floor wasn't concrete, but packed earth that squelched beneath my feet, releasing a foul, stagnant odor. The walls wept a thick, black moisture that pooled in depressions. reflecting my face in shattered, distorted fragments. The basement was empty. Empty, except for the mirror. It stood in the center of the packed earth floor, tall and stark, framed in dark iron. Unlike everything else, it wasn't dusty or decaying. It was polished, pristine, waiting. The frame was a nightmare of grotesque figures. Writhing bodies intertwined, faces locked in expressions of ecstasy or agony, indistinguishable in their torment. Their eyes, tiny iron spheres, seemed to follow my movements as I circled the mirror, a cold, metallic gaze. I stepped closer. In its reflection, the basement was different. Wetter. The black pools deeper, the weeping walls streaming thicker, darker liquid. And in the background, a shape flickered, a woman, her back to me, hair hanging lank and dark. I spun around. Nothing. The cavernous space was empty. I looked back at the mirror. My reflection stared back and smiled. But it wasn't my smile. It was too wide, stretched impossibly, revealing too many teeth, all filed to needle points. My reflection's eyes were black from edge to edge, depthless voids. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice thin and reedy. "Who were you?" It mouthed back, the words echoing not in the room but inside my skull. A cold whisper that scraped against my thoughts. Shock sent me stumbling backward, my heart a frantic drum. My foot caught on something soft. I looked down, a hand, protruding from the packed earth floor, pale and feminine, fingers curled upward as if beckoning. The sight was a violation, a sickening impossibility, a raw scream ripped from my throat, tearing against the oppressive silence. I scrambled away, repulsion warring with terror, away from the obscene touch, the hand reaching from the dirt like a ghastly rooted plant. The mirror cracked. Not a gentle fracture, but a violent, shattering burst from within. A spiderweb of jagged lines spread across the glass, and from each line, a thick, dark substance began to weep, smelling of copper and salt. My reflection laughed, a soundless rictus of sharp teeth, and began to step forward, out of the glass, toward me. Its movements were wrong, joints bending backward, head tilting too far to the side, an impossible distortion of the human form. I fled, scrambling up the stairs 3 at a time, the darkness at my heels like a tangible predator. Something grabbed at my ankle, fingers cold and strong, but I tore free, the skin scraping off against unseen, sharp nails. I ran to the front door. I tried to leave again. This time the door opened. Outside the sky was white, not cloudy, but blank, featureless like an empty canvas or a void where the world should be. A thick white mist swirled around my ankles, obscuring the ground. The road stretched forward, unnaturally clean and unused, vanishing into the nothingness. Houses stood on either side, identical to mine in their decay and wrongness, windows dark, doors shut, no people, no movement, no sound but the frantic hammering of my heart. I ran, past hedges that seemed to rear up and reach for me as I passed, past gardens of blackened churning soil where worms writhed in obscene abundance, fat and pale as fingers. My breath tore from my chest, but I never seemed to gain ground. The houses were the same. The road never curved. The featureless sky remained unchanging. The air itself had waked, resistance, as if I were running underwater. In one window I caught a fleeting glimpse of movement, a figure watching, its face a blur of features that constantly rearranged themselves. Eventually, exhaustion or despair or something else made me turn back. The house was there, waiting. It seemed larger now, more imposing. Its decay more pronounced. The windows were like dark eyes, the slightly ajar door a gaping mouth, and it breathed. The walls expanding and contracting in a slow, patient rhythm. "Welcome home, Arthur," the silence seemed to whisper, though there was no wind to carry the sound. In the time that followed, days, weeks, it was impossible to tell, marked only by the unchanging gray light and the incessant twitching of my watch, I stopped trying to leave. I opened the front door, repeatedly, only to face the same white void, the same unchanging road. I explored the house, every twisted corner, every cracking wall, every warped floorboard. I found notes I didn't remember writing, tucked into books, under dishes, carved into the undersides of furniture. "Where is she? Wake up. It's not real. You're already dead. She's waiting below." She, the question clawed at me. Who was she? Why this desperate obsession? Then her name came to me, a whisper from another life, a breath against the back of my neck in an empty room. Clara. Memory, fractured but sharp, pierced through the fog. Her hands, long fingers, nails painted a deep red, a silver ring on her right index finger. Her laugh, bright and clear like water over stones. The way she'd sit on the counter while I cooked, legs swinging, telling me about her day. Arguments, voices raised, tears, her face contorted with grief, shaking in my arms. A promise, I wouldn't leave, not like everyone else had. Was I looking for her, or was she looking for me? I screamed her name until my voice was raw, until something dark and viscous flecked my lips instead of blood. Still nothing, except, sometimes, in mirrors, in windows, in the sheen of stagnant water pooled on the floor. I caught glimpses. A woman turning away, a hand withdrawing, the hem of a dress disappearing around a corner, and once a face. Her face, pressed against the bedroom window from outside, mouth open in a silent scream, breath fogging the glass before I could reach her. They were fleeting, terrifying, and offered no solace, only amplified the torment. An eternity of wandering, helpless, hopeless. Until one day, something changed. I woke to her scent, jasmine and wood smoke. The faint, familiar smell of her skin in summer. Her blue cashmere sweater, worn soft at the elbows, lay folded on the foot of the bed. A mug sat on the nightstand, steaming gently. Black coffee, no sugar, just how she took it. I bolted upright, the impossible familiarity a shock. Clara? The house didn't answer, but in the deepest corner of the room a shadow shifted, a darkness deeper than absence, shaped almost like a woman, like a presence watching. Drawn by the scent, I followed. Through the halls, the photos on the walls had faces now, sharp and clear. Ours, smiling. A picnic in the park, her head on my shoulder. A wedding, her in white, me in black, both laughing, eyes bright. And a hospital room, her hand in mine, fingers intertwined, her face gaunt, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. They were memories, sharp and cruel against the peeling, stained wallpaper and the floors that still groaned with that wounded sound beneath my feet. Why the hospital? The memory slipped away before I could grasp it. The scent led me back to the basement door. It was closed now. Pinned to it was a note. The paper was damp, the ink bleeding, but the message was clear. You don't belong here. Neither does she. Let her go. I opened the door anyway. The stairs down seemed even longer, the spiral tighter, the darkness thicker, almost solid. Each step groaned beneath my weight, the wood splintering then reforming after I passed. Something followed me down. I heard its breathing, wet and labored, smelled its corruption, a charnel house odor that clung to the air. I didn't turn, I didn't dare. The breathing grew louder, closer, a wet, guttural sound that scraped against my nerves. I felt its heat now, despite the chilling air, a foul breath on the back of my neck. The steps behind me began to creak, mirroring my own descent, but heavier, slower, deliberate. It wasn't just following, it was stalking. Every fiber of my being screamed to run, but the stairs kept twisting down, and the darkness below offered no escape, only deeper unknown. I flicked the light switch at the bottom. The bulb flared, revealing the impossible cavern, the weeping walls, the squelching earth, and the mirror. It had changed. The cracks remained a web of black weeping lines, but through them impossibly I could see Clara. She sat by a window in a room I didn't recognize. Dark, hospital white, sterile. She was reading, holding a book close to her face as if her vision were failing. Tears streamed down her cheeks, silent, constant. She was thinner than I remembered, her collarbone sharp beneath her skin, her hands skeletal. She looked up suddenly as if sensing something, her red-rimmed eyes scanning the empty room. I reached out. My hand passed through the glass, through the barrier that was reality and not reality, into a cold that didn't numb, but burned, a searing, impossible frost that felt like acid stripping sensation down to raw agony. I couldn't go through. She didn't see me. She couldn't. But she felt something. She shivered, rubbing her arms as if chilled. Her exhausted eyes scanned the room again. For a fleeting moment, they seemed to fix on me, widen in a flicker of recognition or horror. Then they slid away. She wiped her eyes, stood and walked away, moving with a frailty that made her seem older than her 34 years. Agony ripped through me, a silent scream tearing at my throat as I watched her retreat, just inches away, yet a universe apart. I slammed my fists against the iron frame, the impact jarring my bones, a futile assault on the barrier between us. Each blow echoed the shattering of hope, the raw, desperate pain of being so close and utterly unable to bridge the gap. The mirror cracked further, the spiderweb lines spreading like disease. My face split into jagged fragments multiplied in each piece, 100 versions of me, each more desperate than the last. Something warm trickled down my cheek. I touched it. My fingers came away red. Real blood. My first proof of life, or at least of existence outside of decay. Back upstairs, the endless cycle resumed. The house continued its accelerated rut. Wallpaper peeled faster, revealing beneath it not plaster but pulsing veined matter that throbbed in time with my steps. The ceiling cracked, black mold blooming in fractal patterns that seemed to spell out accusations when viewed from certain angles. Rust-colored brackish water seeped from unseen places. Lights flickered and died, bulbs exploding in showers of glass that vanished before hitting the floor. The air grew colder, thinner, as if the place itself was decaying with me. And I wondered. Sometimes I saw her again. Through mirrors, through windows, through puddles of stagnant water, reading, sleeping, crying, living without me. She moved through her days like a ghost herself, going through motion, speaking when spoken to. I watched her lose weight, watched dark circles form beneath her eyes, watched her speak to someone, a therapist, in an office with two bright lights, watched her take pills from an orange bottle, swallowing them dry. Each time I tried to speak, to reach her. Each time I failed. One day the mirror in the basement shattered completely, not from violence, not from my blows, from stillness, from truth. There was no more Clara inside, only a hollow reflection of myself, thin, pale, lost, eyes sunken into bruised sockets, skin gray as ash. A man trapped not by walls but by need to go back to Clara. I stopped counting the days, or hours, or whatever passed for time in this place. The house collapsed in pieces around me. The upstairs caved in, timbers splintering like bones. The garden turned to ash, blowing away in a wind I couldn't feel. The air trembled with some silent cosmic grief. The boundaries between rooms dissolved, spaces bleeding into one another, kitchen into bedroom, into bathroom, into grave. And I stayed. Because I couldn't leave. Because I wouldn't. Because somewhere deep inside me, something refused to let go. Not yet. Not ever. Until the day Clara returned it. Not through a mirror or a window. Not a fleeting glimpse or a ghost in the periphery. Until the day she walked through the front door. Older, hair threaded with gray, face lined with the passage of years. But her eyes were the same. Brown and warm and full of a love that had never died. She wore white, simple, clean. In her hand, she held a single red rose, startlingly vibrant against the decay. "I found you," she said. I couldn't speak. My voice was a forgotten sound. She smiled, sad and knowing. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "How?" I managed finally, the word a dry rasp. "The same way you did," she said, stepping closer. She took my hand. Her touch was cool, not warm as I remembered, but grounding, real. I waited, and then I followed. Understanding washed over me like ice water, cold and sharp, cutting through the dust and decay. "How long?" I asked, the question barely a whisper. 50 years, she said. 50 years without you. It was long enough. The house shuddered around us, a final dying groan. Walls dissolved like sugar in rain. The ceiling peeled back, revealing not sky but an endless star-strewn void. "We can go now," she said, tugging gently at my hand. "Together." "Where?" I asked, though I knew. I had always known. Somewhere beneath the horror and the waiting. "On," she said simply, "just on." The floor beneath us gave way. We fell, or perhaps floated into that waiting darkness, hand in hand. The house that never was, built from guilt and despair, collapsed behind us, returning to the nothing from which my need had formed. We didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. Only forward, only on. Together, at last.
Sweet dreams.